What's a first world problem that's a third world luxury? Many developing nations have a problem with too much clothing. So much second-hand clothing from developed nations gets donated, resold to them, that it undercuts local production. Textiles are one of easiest and cheapest ways to begin a manufacturing economy, so these second-hand goods help prevent these nations from developing beyond an extraction-based economy. I've gone shopping for clothes maybe a handful of times. I've never really needed to because 1, I stopped growing in middle school and I still fit into the same clothes as then, so a lot of my clothes are old but usable, and 2, I get a lot of hand-me-downs from my mill. My sister and my mother, being the smallest, has its perks, and because I have clothes constantly being given to me, I'm constantly making donations. It's surreal though, like we have to watch our intake and do shit like exercise just to avoid getting fat. Obesity is one of the biggest killers in the first world. Our bodies are designed to eat food when it's available because we've got 100,000 years of evolution telling us to, because who knows when we'll eat again. It sucks, and just eating less goes against our basic instinct. I was born in Eritrea, country on the Horn of Africa, and when I was a kid I would alternate between living with my grandparents and my mother. My father moved to the U.S. on a student visa shortly after I was born. My mother was a teacher and the government would send her to 2 indigenous villages that had absolutely no running water, electricity or anything of that sort, so we would piss and SHT outdoors and you'd have to find either leaves or a smooth rock to wipe your ass with. On the flip side, my grandparents lived in the capital city where they had indoor plumbing, but the toilet was a hole you would have to squat over and then manually dump a bucket of water to flush your SHT. And afterwards you would wipe your ass with an old newspaper, and at the time I thought this was the epitome of high-class living. After my father finished school and got his U.S. citizenship, he was able to bring me to the States when I was 9 years old, 2003. Since then I've became Americanized as fuck, and if I ever go to your house and I see single-ply toilet paper I will judge the fuck out of you. Yep. I lived in Shenzhen, China for half a year, and even that was enough to be overjoyed when I came back to the US. The air, it tastes so sweet and clean. There's no garbage in the streets. The water doesn't smell like hot cabbage. I can get fresh produce. After a few days appreciating everything I went back to bitching about traffic, to say nothing of the city I was born in Ukraine. Edit: when I say fresh produce I don't mean there was no produce. I mean it was generally pretty bad quality and almost all of it way underripe. This was 7 years ago in the area we were in. I'm sure there is good, fresh produce in Shenzhen. It's a huge city. It just wasn't our experience at the time. From what I hear it's changed considerably since then. 7 years is a long time in China. Ukraine, I was pretty vague. I wasn't saying it's better than China, although the air is definitely cleaner and the food was better, but naturally I'm biased. More that I should know better than to bitch about first world problems given that I was born and spent my toddler life there, have heard stories growing up, and have visited twice. I could easily have ended up living out my adult life in Ukraine, and I'm forever grateful for my parents for bringing me to the US, but I still complain when the Bluetooth takes too long to connect, so you know. I worked with a guy who was from a remote village in Eritrea. He was also Americanized as fuck, but he didn't see a toilet until he was like 13. Told me he held a shit for like 3 days because he now lived in St. Paul, Minnesota, and there was no place to shit because there were so many houses and people around. His dad finally noticed him in the backyard looking around, so he showed him the toilet. He said watching the toilet flush and realizing what it was for was one of the best moments of his life. Lol. Whenever we visited my Korean grandmother, we'd stay in her old school property. Like with different shacks as rooms, a kitchen, a courthouse. If you watch any historical Asian drama, that style, the only running water was for the sink faucet. And the toilet was an outhouse with a hole in the ground. Waste didn't go anywhere, we had to squat over the hole to do our business. We luckily had toilet paper, but my god, it's been over 20 years and I still remember the smell. We're so lucky to live in America. Lol. I am from India and we are, still, considered third world, but I believe we have great prices for internet here. I pay Rs. 800, approx $11, per month for 100 Mbps up and down symmetrical speed, unlimited too. To add to this, nobody cares if we torrent as well. I personally never use VPN unless I want to actually access US Netflix library. Ooh, you probably never been to Germany, my friend. We pay about €40, that's considering we get the bonus, for 215-bit/s and we never reach it, because it's choked by the company. On a good day we get 120-bit/s tops. Mobile internet is even worse. There's almost no coverage in remote areas, and by remote I mean less than 100k population. When you travel from one city to another there are always blind spots, even if the city's as close to each other as Berlin and Potassium. I have always lived in a home with a pool. When I bought my first house, having a pool felt like such a necessity to me. After a couple of years it clicked that we swim way less than we think and it makes zero sense to be spending a few grand every year in upkeep just so we can swim 15-20 times annually. Next place I live will definitely not have a pool and I'll just spend that money on taking my family on a nice vacation instead. South Africa's unemployment reached a record high of 34.4%. That's not factoring the people who are underemployed or are only partially employed. Most people I know have had their salary drop considerably over the last year with businesses trying to keep afloat. I'd earned half a salary for a year. Prices keep rising. Then the riots. The new crime stats are frightening. I want to get out of here but everything I have, not a lot, would be divided by 1520 with an exchange rate. As a Costa Rican, I'm concerned about how 90% of first world problems you people are mentioning are also just inconveniences to us in general. Like WTF dude, geez, people think I like smudges on my Nike Air Force One or Doc Martens. Also, damn, too cold or too hot water? Do you guys really think Vietnam, Thailand or Argentina don't have that for the average person? So far the only valid one I have seen is having a garage that doesn't fit all your cars. The rest is, with all due respect, a wishful thinking of all people here wanting to think that we never have food to eat unless you live in Canada or something. I live in a very bad third world country. I'll explain some of the problems we experience. We no longer have petrol. We must wait about 6 hours or more to fill up petrol at the station. Our local currency has devalued by 20 times, making things so much expensive. We have no medicine, not even Panadol anymore. Electricity cuts off for about 16 hours a day. I live in an upper-middle-class house. The problem here affects all people of class. Imagine going to a hospital and there being no electricity to do an operation. No matter how rich you are, you can't get many medicines that are life or death. I'll try to answer. The thing is, the third world population isn't a monolith. Like every country, there are wealthy, mid-class and poor. The wealthy and upper-middle-class people probably has all the luxuries these comments mentioned and more. But there is also the poor class, people still living in super dense housing area. I'll try to link a picture when I'm on PC. Like I'm talking, the streets are barely 2 meters wide dense. A good proportion of my country is still very underdeveloped infrastructure-wise. We don't have drinkable tap water. A lot of places, even in big cities, don't have reliable hot water. Until like 5 years ago electricity shutdown was a regular thing here, etc. By third world country do you mean developing or undeveloped country? Using third world to describe the wealth of a country is a terrible system. First, second and third world are to describe who was allied to who in the Cold War. Switzerland and Ireland are third world. There's no official list, but the difference between undeveloped and developing countries are huge. Mali is an undeveloped country but Brazil is developing. The difference in quality of life is huge. Plus, do you mean a big city in a less developed country or the countryside? Because there's often huge wealth differences between rich and poor in undeveloped, developing countries, see Brazil. I'm from South America and it's kinda odd to me how many of you got third world luxuries so wrong. First off, Not everyone in a third world country is poor. There is a middle class here as well. Whatever can be bought, there's people here that can buy it as well. The real third world luxuries are more related to infrastructure, celerity of public works, jails, and how dependent people are of government handouts. Meanwhile, there are people right here in the US who are living in conditions poor enough to rival the third world. Destitute, homeless, living in makeshift shanties. We've got them here. Even in some of the nicer neighborhoods in LA there is a serious homeless problem, and although it's been a while since I drove through the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota, when I did years ago it definitely looked like a third world country. They weren't third world citizens though, just proud Americans without running water or basic sanitation. They aren't poor, they're just millionaires without any money. /SBTW. You may know this, but originally First World meant countries aligned with the US, Second World were countries aligned with the USSR, and Third World was everyone else. So not necessarily poor, just independent-minded. Well, first off, no one on this post knows the difference between First World and Third World. They also clearly don't know what First World or Third World mean. Also, they are forgetting about Second World countries. All terms are outdated as well. Pretty sure they should have just said poor versus rich, but the op was just reposting with a twist from another post that actually said poor versus rich. Bro, I have over 500, and that was only possible thanks to the regional pricing. Region Locks team has applied to my country, Turkey, and I can't even play all of them because my computer can't handle modern games right now lol. Nothing else is affordable. We have over 200% tax to the even most basic tech shit, so I can buy as many good games as I want with practically pocket change for a middle-class person, but not a computer to play them on because those cost a damn organ. I hate it so much. I'm surprised I had to scroll this far to find this. My parents are overseas at the moment and cannot fathom people are declining free vaccines in first world countries. Edit. My parents aren't on holiday. They got fed up of the racism after Brexit and left to go back to Kenya. They usually visit us kids in the UK to make sure we're all good. My original comment lacked this context. I know a lot of people would have said access to the internet as something the majority of the world doesn't have access to, but truthfully, the majority of the world does have access to the internet, and while it's still mostly the case in traditionally third world countries, calling ourselves the minority for our internet access just isn't truthful anymore. It's hilarious that people have such an image of the three-red world. I am an Indian American. I grew up in the US and live and work in the West Coast, and I visit India regularly. US, First World, and India, Third World. India, chicken, veggies etc. are farm fresh and without preservatives. Meat is butchered in front of me and packed with muscles still spasming. If the apples are starting to go bad, 3 kilos for 100 Rs or $1.25 US. Apples and fruits are on the shelf for about a year at an UP grocery store. Meat glue. Meat past best before date, painted with blood and repackaged. Chicken with female estrogen hormones to help men grow breasts. India, Rs. 100 or $1.25 for a H&M dress shirt for my son. Super great shirt have Rs. 750 or $10. Pure leather Benetton belt Rs. 200 or $2.50. Yes, they are on sale. US. Of the cost of a good leather belt from a brand named $40. Minimum cost of a good shirt even at Ross Dress for less $35. India bedding, towels, everything pure cotton and $350, $5 to $750, $10. For king-sized cotton bedsheets with a 144 thread count. US minimum $75 for a good cotton bedsheet. The cost of living is ridiculously low in third world countries, and in Dominican Republic or Vietnam or India, all third world countries, the quality of life is much better for middle class as compared to the US. As an Indian who lives abroad themselves, I'm going to have to disagree on the healthcare sucking. I've found that most healthcare and education is affordable or at least accessible when compared to the United States. I've heard a lot of horror stories about the American healthcare system, but the Indian one doesn't fail most of the people I've known. Not being able to afford gas or maintenance for your car. It's a genuine problem on the one hand because at least in the US, you need a car, and a safely maintained one at that, to get to your job, to doctor's appointments, to the grocery store, etc. It takes 3 buses where I live to get to the local Walmart less than 5 miles away. I can't get to my dog, a 30-minute drive, on the bus. This goes many times over if you're disabled, as Medicaid transportation is widely known in the disabled community to be staffed with dangerous drivers or rude, ableist people, or both. On the other hand, a car is a luxury. Being able to drive places in a motorized vehicle? Insane. Sure, people in third world countries have cars, that's not the point I'm making. It's that everybody here has a car. Paid leave. In many poorer countries, they're happy just to have work every day. Most work in the agricultural or manufacturing sector is very low paying and scheduling is inconsistent. There's a large production demand in key times of the year, when there's a harvest, or there's a ramp up for the holidays, since most spending also happens inconsistently. I was once told this story by a coworker. This guy is driving this contractor from Africa to the office. They get stuck in traffic due to road construction, and the guy turns to the contractor and says, "This is something else." Huh? The contractor replies, "This is amazing. In my country the roads are falling apart because they're so old. I wish we had road repair like this where I come from." It completely changed the guy's perspective on road construction. It may still be an inconvenience sometimes, but now he has an appreciation for it he didn't have before. It definitely opened my eyes the first time I heard the story. My tape water tastes gross. I get all cranky when my Skyrim game on my Switch is too dark to see on my TV. I hate the leather couch my boyfriend insisted on keeping because I stick to it. I was home a lot during COVID, so I cooked too much delicious food and gained a few pounds. Sometimes I can't consolidate my errands into a smooth trip and spend a lot of time driving around in traffic. My apartment is down a set of stairs, and if I get too many groceries I get all sweaty marching them down the stairs, and I have to take a bunch of trips. I haven't found a good way to store all the crafting supplies for my hobbies. My boyfriend likes the house warmer than I do, so we argue about what temperature to set our central air at. Sometimes I forget clothes in the washer and I have to wash them again so they don't smell weird. My Costco isn't serving the combo pizza anymore, and I have to get the pepperoni instead. I keep breaking my nice wine glasses trying to shove my man hand into them to clean them, because my dishwasher leaves gunk in them sometimes. I could list things like this for days. The point is, I am really grateful for a lot of shit in my life. I complain about things in our political system, and that my generation got boned by the boomers, but I am incredibly fortunate to be a lower, middle-class white woman in America. I live in a third world country too, and I'm poor. Like, the government gives me aid and my house isn't completely built poor, but half of the first world problems listed here apply to me. Everybody here has water and electricity, and the only people I know without smartphones are all over 70 years old. Living in documentary-style conditions is weird even if you are in the low class. It really makes you think about how the fuck do people in first world countries actually think we live like. Our country's being poor is already bad enough. They don't need to pretend we're literally living in the Stone Age to boast their egos and give themselves humbling sob stories about how lucky they are. I am sorry to be a contrarian, but it is not necessarily true. Here in Brazil we are in epidemics of fatness because of the bad nutritional quality of the food, especially among poor people, not miserable people. They are in a whole other terrible place. I know it is the same in other poor countries too. This is the same in different countries in Africa and Asia, and I could be wrong, but among poor people in USA, I'm a bit confused about what people define as third world in this thread, since so many of the answers, about 95%, are just common inconveniences in Latam for regular people. Like some demos mentioned automatic cars as a luxury here? Do they are everywhere and almost all have them here? Or AC in cars? Do people really think car companies make special AC cars for Europe but not East Asia? Or the charging cables one? Oh, wow, I bet average Nigerians got no idea what a cell PH90 and a charger are. It's crazy how many think we have no supermarkets here or something. Sure, I bet everyone hunts for their meal in Panama.